So today I'm going to be talking to Elise Oursa. Hello, Elise.
Hi, Vic.
Hi. My traditional first question is, what do you do?
What do I do?
Exactly.
I do a lot of things, Vic. I guess I'm a tarot reader. I'm a card reader. I'm a practicing witch. What else? But what do I do? As you know, I run a daily tarot group on Zoom for people who have a tarot practice where we meet and we and practice together. I'm a mother. I look after a child. I'm a lover of dogs. I'm walking out in the woods every day with dogs, and yeah, basically just walking my path in that direction.
Interesting. That's really good. So, what I like to do is to sort of pick up a series of threads, about how people arrive, because there's a lot of creative things that you do, which I want to sort of find out about. Okay, let's go to the first thing, which is, how did you get started with the tarot readings and the witchery? Let's go back to the beginning, shall we?
Yeah. Let's dive straight in.
Yeah.
So the tarot was really my gateway drug into magic, and I think I probably got my first tarot deck. I'm from the States, from I don't know if you know what Spencer's in the mall in the States. Someone listening to this will, and they'll be laughing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Spencer's it's this really is in every kind of 1980s shopping mall, and it's like this really awful novelty shop with things like T-shirts with marijuana leaves on them, and posters of all your favorite bands, and tarot decks, in a cupboard with a key. So you would go into Spencer's as a kid and feel a bit dangerous and naughty, and probably shoplift whatever you could. So I'm not saying that my first tarot deck was shoplifted, but
not saying that. No, okay.
I'm not saying that. I'm fairly certain it wasn't, in fact. But I can confess that it came from Spencer's in the mall. And so that would have been maybe when I was 15 or 16, and I started playing. And back then all I had was like the tarot deck and the little white book, and maybe if you went into the bookstore in the mall, there would be a little section of new age books, and so I may have picked up a book or two there. But I'm from the Bible Belt. I'm from the Deep South.
Right.
So this was really my parents were pretty accepting of it, a bit suspicious, but okay. But it wasn't. It was really deeply in conflict with the culture that I grew up in, and I think age been raised in a churchy sort of way, let's say, and age 15, that sort of age, things started going in a different way from the church. So I had a big conflict, like, oh my God, am I going to go to hell for reading the tarot cards? And I had a lot of fear around kind of magical experience in general.
But it obviously drew you in.
Yeah, it did. It did draw me in. And it came back, I put it away, and it kind of, it would come, the tarot would come in and out of my life. And then maybe, about 20 years ago, it came back in a big way. And I started studying intensively and daily. And then, the more you get into it, the there's all the different layers. So the more I
Yeah.
started delving into magic and connecting with things in that way as well.
This is fascinating. See, a lot of there's so many threads here I want to sort of pick up on. I'm quite intrigued by how certain early experiences play out in the rest of your life, some really early on. So was there anything before that made you, because you obviously just didn't turn up in a shopping mall and go, oh, that thing that's locked away in a cupboard, which obviously nobody's allowed to buy, I'm going to buy one then. Particularly if because I have no idea what the Bible Belt would be like. I've only got my assumptions of it, which would be something I couldn't probably wrap my head around, coming from where I come from.
Yeah.
So what was the earlier bit where?
Okay. So I think you're essentially asking what's your earliest weird experience,
yes,
right?
I am. Yeah.
My earliest weird experience was maybe age 6 or 7. Every night I would speak in a different language in my sleep.
Oh my God, that is really amazing. Right, okay.
I don't remember this obviously because I was asleep, right? Yeah. But I do remember my mother talking about it at the time, and she still will mention it from time to time. And it was not a language that anyone recognized, not that any of my family speak anything other than English, but they would have recognized Spanish or French or something. Yeah. But she said it sounded, I had an ex-uncle, my aunt had been married to a man who could read like Middle English and Old English very fluidly. And so my mother said it was something that sounded like that, like the rhythm of what I was saying. And I would just be at night, like blah, 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 just on and on and on and on. And I have no idea what that was. It's something that happened and then went away, completely unconscious to me.
Yeah.
We also, this is in Alabama in the late 70s, 80s. My family is a very matrilineal family. And I want, for sure, I don't come from a line of witches or anything like that. But also in my family, there's just this sense of, there always was this sense of the presence of ghost, the presence of history, like all the different layers of spirits of the land, Native American spirits and gods. And it's not really that anybody gives it any deep theory of meaning. It's just how it is. Everybody in my family has a ghost story, plenty of ghost stories. So there was definitely something in the family that was open to the experience of the other, which then paved the way for me to emerge, I guess.
Yes, yeah, I think that's interesting. I grew up in Cornwall, and my mother was very psychic lady, so it was all sorts of crazy stuff was going on. But it seemed completely normal. It's only in retrospect it seemed a bit weird.
Yeah.
But of course, being in Cornwall, and I've mentioned this before on the program with somebody else, you heard stories from your friends. Just like, looking in the mirror at a particular, whenever it was, Halloween or whatever, to see who it was that you would, meet and blah, blah, blah. And that was completely normal. They didn't think that was strange at all. It's only in reflection that, literally in reflection, but, looking back at it, you sort of go, there was a lot of active awareness of stuff going on in the community, right? And that just seemed straightforward. It's only when I got much older I started to look at that and go, okay, hang on, it's not as I sort of think. If you're in, as like you're saying there, you've got family stories, and everybody's got a ghost story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a wonderful book by Catherine Wyndham Tucker called 13 Alabama Ghosts. This book in my family, everyone had the copy of this book. And it's a collection of short stories. The author is fairly amazing. Her life story is amazing in herself because she was a journalist, a female journalist in Alabama in the 1930s. So that in itself is amazing. But she's collected all of these folkloric ghost stories. And they really, they talk about real ghosts, and she weaves them into the history of Alabama, the civil rights movement, the Civil War, all on back and back and back. And I have an ancestor who appears in the book. So it was always like, okay, we have a ghost ancestor, basically. And this, like, we just knew it from day one.
Yeah.
And we all had the book, and I have a copy now as well, just to keep him close. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, you got your first tarot deck.
Yeah.
And then you said that sort of, how long did that keep you sort of I was going to say amused. Perhaps that's not the right word, but.
Yeah. It kept me very, very amused. I think I think probably, I also had some experiences like in my teens with like supernatural. I guess nowadays we have the word hag attack. I didn't have that word back then.
No, you had some.
But yeah, I had some experiences over a course of like 6 to 7 months, which were absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
And it was because of that I really things were just starting to happen in my life. That I couldn't explain.
No.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. And there wasn't anyone there to guide me in how to deal with it, because the advice down there for dealing with these things is go to church. You're going to hell,
Yeah.
So I shut it down, I shut it down for a long time. And I really had to work out some mental knots for not letting those experiences in. And we're taught like, I won't go into details of like the details of the hag attack, but things that I had to shut down were things like entering into a space and being able to feel the resonances, the energies there, the things that had happened, how things were moving, and I wasn't able to deal with it without being afraid of it. So that it got shut down for a very, very long time.
Right.
I would say probably, after my daughter was born 15 years ago was when it started, when I really started allowing, hey, maybe I'm not an atheist.
Right. Interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, because I think a lot of these things are now becoming quite, as you say, that what they call, what's the sleep
paralysis.
Sleep paralysis. That's right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have that.
Yeah.
And although you can always point to a physical thing, it's like a lot of this stuff. You can always point to something physical, but there's something else.
Yeah.
In like with all of this stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. I was having that. There was lots of really intense poltergeist type activity as well. Sensitive adolescent girl. Shit's just started happening.
Yeah. So was it, how physical were those things?
Yeah, quite physical. It wasn't all in my head, but yeah.
Oh no.
Things moving, things
coming out the cupboard and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You can't sort of look at that and go, that's not actually happening, when it's actually happening.
No.
There's a little story of somebody that I was talking to who said that within their family in South Africa, they had a lot of poltergeist activity around the sun, and wherever they moved, it would move with them, because obviously their sun was moving with them, obviously.
Yeah.
And I said to this chap, this person who was telling the story, I said, did you actually see any of it? And they went, well, yeah, it did. We went there, out on holiday, and one day there was a passageway leading up the hallway sort of thing. And she said, the cutlery drawer, the bit that goes in that you put your knives and forks in, the little box bit, came up the hallway, just like floated up the hallway. So I said, what did you do? And then she said, just stood to one side. Well, this thing just travelled past. This is pretty amazing, because it's one of the things I was going to say when you were talking about this sort of type of activity is once you experience something like that, there's no turning back. It's like there's a red pill moment where you suddenly go like, okay, there's something I don't understand here, but it is happening, and particularly when somebody is
it's an initiation for sure. You see, okay, the door is open, and it's up to you to, do I step through or do I close that door? And honestly, you don't have to step through. I'm I'm big on that. You make the decision. The door's still there. You can step through at another time when it's appropriate, if it is appropriate. Yeah.
It's amazing. So, okay, you got your tarot cards. You've done your stint with your tarot cards, and lots of other stuff is going on. And but you said then, what happens? You sort of shut it down until and somehow you've ended up here in the UK.
I've come back full circle. So I shut it down at that point in my life. I was at university. I was at music school. I played French horn.
Oh, okay.
So life at music school is about competing and practicing, and and I was on scholarship, so there was a lot of pressure as well. Kind of got to the end of that journey, and it's like, oh man, I never want to look at a French horn again.
Well,
it's not the most fun of instruments,
No, obviously somebody finds it fun. It's interesting you say that, because I know that your father, isn't it? Who is a brass. He teaches.
Yeah. He teaches. So in America, those like fantastic music education in the schools, not like over here.
Yeah.
So he teaches, or he taught. He's retired now. Middle school band. So he'll teach, beginners. Kind of like it's like 3 years you're in middle school. So he gets them from the very beginning, and teaches all of the instruments. A bunch of kids in a room together from scratch, which is amazing.
That is incredible. That is when I could fully understand the brilliance of that, because I'm only generally just messing around with the guitar, but just teaching a bunch of kids at the same time, and I'm reasonably good, but it's difficult, and it is a real skill. So how he does it with loads of classical instruments, I don't know.
Yeah, powerhouse.
Absolutely amazing. That is incredible. So because I didn't know about the music, your musical side.
Yeah.
So I can understand, because I had a couple of friends who were really good with classical instruments, who also played contemporary instruments, and when they got to the end of their time, that was it. They didn't want to touch that instrument again, which is such a shame. But that's So
I always, I for a long time I had a lot of internal conflict around that, because music was just what I was doing from the age of 11, and until 23, 24, and it's such a part of your identity. Then to give it up, it's like, wow, what am I? Who am I?
Yeah.
And you don't know, when you're in your 20s, you've got no clue. And so, I reached this point where I tell myself, okay, look, I'll go back to it if I can find a way to do it for fun, when it's fun. And I never have found a way to go back to it and do it for the love of it or for the fun of it. It's just tied up too much in like for the need for approval and pressure, all of that. But I have come to a place where I realize that I kind of, in a sense, once a musician, always a musician. Like there's so many things that being a musician gives you that that you cannot step out of, no matter what. So I guess like the next part of the story
that is a brilliant
yeah
observation, because you always approach music. You approach the world from the art form that you come from. I think my own experience of this is through music, but I see it with other people. In a weird way, I approach music from art, strangely. But you do see the world in a different way, because your brain is structured in understanding structure, if you see. And because the amount of time that you put in, your 10,000 hours or whatever, it does change the way that you think.
Absolutely. And I think when I finally managed to find a decent job after I gave up being a musician, I was working in publishing, designing websites for mainly for magazines, and that evolved. I trained. This is the part I left out when I introduced myself. I trained as a craniosacral therapist.
All right.
So this is it's a big word. Lots of people haven't heard of it, but it's energy work. It's energy healing. And it was really doing that training where I was able to connect the dots up with the abandoned musical experience, because just like, when you're sitting in an orchestra and you have to listen, you're listening to everyone around you, and you're also, you are producing the music with the vibration of the music, but you're also sensing, feeling everyone else's noise, and with rhythms and patterns and all of that. So it is very, very applicable to energy healing, to energy work, and to sitting and witnessing. I mean, if you're the conductor of an orchestra, okay, you're directing things in a certain direction. But people who do energy healing, if you're decent at it, you're not directing it. You're listening. Maybe there's a little nudge, but you're listening and participating in the same way that I feel that musicians do when they come together and create music together.
Yeah, I mean, you talk to somebody who's a really good player in contemporary music, and that is totally on the money.
Yeah.
Because it is, you don't really know what's going to happen next. You might have a song that you sort of think But I mean, particularly if you do, the guys I work with, you start a song and it literally could go anywhere. And it's all about, listening. And of course, if you're involved in things like Indian music, it's even more. It's a conversation between musicians.
And it's when you hit that sweet spot when you're performing and you enter kind of a flow state, and it doesn't always happen in a piece of music, but when it does, and once you've experienced that in music, then that's another door opening experience, isn't it?
It is.
You're opening the door to, just as you are in healing, just as you are in magic, you're opening the door to the other.
Well, this is really good, because this is one of the things that I've not really managed to coax out of people until what you're saying. This is definitely where I come from with music, and that because I always come in. There's a sort of an NLP thing, which, to be quite honest, is a grab bag of anything from, well, if you know anything about Bandler, it's literally anything from anywhere. Lots of it from New Mexico, really, but if you get my drift. So, you look at that and you think, well, there's something about those states of mind which are about the, however you want to call it, the right side of the brain or the deep unconscious or whatever you want to frame it, which you can find in music, and it's state changing. And you could look at it as you say, like you're opening doorways to something that's not here. It's another state. And it's, as you say, a flow state.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also for me that, there's, because my preferred way of healing work is body work. So for me, that flow state, that state change, it comes from the body. It's not something that we don't sit and meditate and it happens up here in the brain. It's something that is a field phenomena and includes the whole body and the space around the body. And I think, playing, taking back, French horn's a fairly big, substantial instrument. So you play a note in the French horn and your whole body, you feel it in the whole body. And, you really get a sense of resonances. The low notes feel a different way in the body than the high notes do. So I would say that early experience really attuned me to, maybe I even the poltergeisty stuff, maybe I had to shut that door until I was ready to deal, till I had gone through the process, the musical training and then the healing training, to handle it.
Yeah, I think so. That's amazing. So anyway, you pulled a couple of things just out of thin air, like you started designing websites or something for, that's that's a bit of a jump from nowhere. You obviously
it was, yeah.
you just trying how to do it, and that was it, was it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. This is like 1994. Okay. Like the internet's brand new. Everybody's throwing money at stuff. I'm slightly artsy. I decide, I'd been floating around not being a musician anymore, not knowing who I was. And I decide like, wow, this internet thing is an amazing way of connecting people together. Talked my way into a job. Convinced them to put me on a diploma training course down in London. Did the diploma training course.
Okay, we've now arrived in London. How did you arrive in London? Sorry.
On a train. You mean how did I get from America to the UK?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I came over to the UK in 1994 on a year abroad through university, and then while I was over here, the general story, met a fella, and came back a few years later, and never left. Really got rid of him. Like got rid of him. I stayed.
Englishmen and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But so you're in London. So what's the next stage? What happens?
I think that the next stage in London, I was actually working for a group of music magazines.
Oh, right.
So yeah, so that those years in London, a bit of a blur to be honest, because we're like, the heady days before the internet bust, and music magazines, interviewing bands, going to concerts, going to parties, getting up the next morning, doing it again, going to all the festivals.
What magazines?
Oh God, you would be hard pressed to name a music magazine that I haven't worked for.
Oh, okay. Right. So
everybody.
Cool. Well, that's interesting. So once you've got, there's obviously another turning point here, isn't there? What happens?
Yeah, I think the next turning point was really my daughter coming along. Yeah, and that was the real, I don't know, crisis point in life. That's not polite to say about your own daughter, is it? But that was really, really the thing that changed everything. And I had a really difficult early start with her. For me, she was fine. I was not fine. I had postnatal depression for quite badly. So it was really, life assessment time. And that was when I retrained as a craniosacral therapist. There was, childbirth, it's another door opening experience. You have kids. I'm sure you you understand, like you cannot have a child and not realize like how closely we walk to death. It's one of those moments that's like, yeah, it's both. Yeah, just I'm babbling incoherently now.
No. Seriously, this is something that, I mean, I've spoken to quite a lot of people about the fact that, there are certain set out initiations in life that
Yeah,
women have and men
yeah,
don't.
yeah,
And in this society, we don't, the men, that's why a lot of men just don't even grow up.
yeah,
I think that's fair to say. That's just the way.
yeah,
And obviously, childbirth is an initiation that, if you think about it, any initiation is dangerous.
yeah,
And I think once you get that realization, how close that is,
yeah,
it's a different level.
yeah, yeah. And it was, I guess, after she was born, I realized at the time through going through the birthing process that things clearly didn't go the direction we were expecting, but I didn't realize just like how bad it was until we got the notes back from the doctors, and I realized, oh wow, like I actually could have died in that situation. There was a moment. There was when I was in labor, I had acupressure from the hospital. They did it at the hospital with the acupuncturist, which she was trying to stimulate contractions to come on more. And she sent me home. She put seeds, taped them on my ear in particular pressure points. And one of the seeds and the position it was in was supposed to stimulate the uterus. Okay. So I went to bed and went home, went to bed, and they were like, okay, come back tomorrow. And I woke up in the morning really early, and I was feeling my ear where these little pressure point seeds were. And the one that was supposed to stimulate the uterus was gone. And I was like, oh my, what's happened? What's happened? And I swear I heard a voice, I heard my daughter's voice. And my daughter said to me, you need to get me out of here. It's time. So went to the hospital, had a C-section, and unknown to me, there was a really rare complication that if we'd gone through like a normal birth, it's pretty likely that I wouldn't be here and she wouldn't either, So so that, those experiences change you deeply. There's no going back. There's no going back.
It's an amazing story. Do you know, because there's lots of things that I can sort of resonate with that, where you sort of go like, I don't know where that came from. But it's almost like, time doesn't make any sense anymore, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, if you say, it was your daughter's voice.
Yeah. 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 This speed, baby in my belly who has no voice yet was speaking to me as like a grown person.
Exactly. From the shoot. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I think this is something I wanted to sort of talk about, because I tend not to plan any of these. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But sometimes I get a little idea that sort of pops into my head. I think, it's interesting. Maybe that's going to come up. And also, this is sort of ripples in a pool type of thing,
Yeah.
And one of them was this idea about, obviously with time, how elastic or non-existent time is from the point of view that we think it's straight line, because weird stuff happens. And I've often pondered this because in songs, I'm just going to float this now, actually. I've been fascinated by songs written by people, famous people, that sort of predict something. And there are a lot of them. And they're always sort of like ignored. And you go, that's strange. It's almost like they slip under the radar unless you're looking. And you go, that's a bit weird. in that song by so-and-so, he says this, and this actually happens to this person. Or even more bizarre, when somebody writes a song and their son sings the song, and it starts to set off a series of events, you know. And you know, and again, like with all these things, you can go, is it that your unconscious knows this stuff? And it's, you know, it's almost like drawing you to the future. Or is it something else? Because it doesn't really matter. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's logical explanations. Because as soon as you tried it, it's like trying to grasp smoke. You know, as soon as you try to grab it, there's nothing there, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered that whether there's something goes on with, you know, in this case, music, but it could be any form of art, where there is something where time just doesn't. It doesn't work. It suddenly is a mismatch, you know. You know, a song almost draws you to the place. It was already, you know, like a song already exists. You just happen to find it, type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Martin Prechtel?
No.
Right?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. I'm really good with like broad things, and when you ask me a detail, I'm like, I don't know what's.
He was American, but he trained as a Guatemalan shaman.
Okay, no.
I think there's a book called The Secrets of the Talking Jaguar.
Oh, okay, I've heard of this. Yeah.
Well, Martin Prechtel tells a story about traveling to South America, and he didn't really know where he was particularly going. He was just, you know, and he nearly dies. He has an accident. I think it's in a bus or something, and the bus turns over or something like that. Anyway, he almost drowns or something. But this experience of like almost dying, he sort of feels like he's being sucked in. He said it's like being sucked into honey. Where you don't want to fight anymore.
Yeah.
So comfortable, you just wanted to go. And he actually said he heard his grandchildren speak to him. And
wow.
So it was quite interesting you tell that story, because
I think definitely at these desperate pivot moments in life, you know, things go a bit loosey goosey, don't they? You know, I think time. Obviously, our experience of time is linear, right? And I'm a big one in believing that I chose to be here in this body as a human being. I made that choice, and so my job on this earth is not to try to escape my humanity through enlightenment or you know, like these divine trying to be more divine than human, seeking divine revelation. That kind of, like, my journey is on with my feet on the ground. So that puts me at the mercy of time. But you know, it's not a mathematical equation. Or at least, because I'm not very good at math, it's a more sophisticated mathematical equation, you know. So when we have these moments of peak experience as well, I think peak experiences of any kind, whether they're ecstatic or traumatic, can open the door to a different experience of time. You know. But like in that story you just told, you know, he didn't step through the door. He chose not to die, right? That's right. Know, he stayed here, so he got to step into this place where time goes a bit loopy, but he's still at the mercy of linear time when
well, the thing is, you can think about, you know, it's similar to walking. I know you do a lot of walking. But you know, if you walk in a straight line long enough, you end up coming back on yourself.
Yeah.
I think time is like that. I think that's, you know, it's actually a sphere of time, as best we can sort of, you know. And there are moments where you realise you've come back on yourself. You know, when you thought you were walking in a straight line, type of thing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, here we are again. This old pattern. Oh, my friend. Hello.
And you know, I quite again, you can't make any sense out of those experiences, but they do happen enough that you sort of look at it.
Yeah, I don't think from, some people like need to explain things. They need to put definitions on these experiences, and this is this realm of experience, this is this realm of experience. I don't myself. I mean, to a certain extent, I could enjoy playing those games, but actually, that takes me further away from experiencing what is, and it's, you especially, doing like really deep, like with my craniosacral work, you're in a really deep session with someone, time contracts and it expands. You can feel like it's been 3 hours and you look at the clock and it's only been 5 minutes, and vice versa. You're in a space where you like your understanding or your measurement, your own internal measurement of time is just completely different. And I lost the thread of what I had a really good point to make. Damn.
That's a very good point, because again, going back to the NLP thing, I've seen that done a lot under trance.
Yeah.
You can make people think they've been doing something for 3 hours and they've only been doing it for a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's just like dreams, because we know that dreams, you have a long dream and it only lasted for a short period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
But as far as in your dream state, it could have been lasting for a long time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I was going to say, because it's the question of with dreams or supernatural, unexplainable experiences. The question is, what is real? I heard my unborn daughter's voice speaking to me as a grown up, giving me the advice that I needed in order to stay alive. Plenty of people would tell me that wasn't real, or it's impossible. That can't happen. But it did happen, and whether I believed that was my higher self or, my intuition speaking in a particular way to me, it doesn't matter. The experience happened, the definition of what it was doesn't matter. The experience happened and it worked. I stayed alive,
Yeah, totally with that. So we've got to this bit now. I'm intrigued how you started on your path of all the other things which we know you for. Far away.
Okay, what happens? I'm working as a craniosacral therapist. I volunteered in a charity for a number of years, working with women who were living with HIV.
Oh, okay.
I had my own private practice as well, and I was sitting in this place where I realized that the experiences that I was having with my clients on the table were very different than the theory of what I'd been taught.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, my computer, I'm looking at you now because my computer is propped up on a bunch of really thick craniosacral therapy books, all written by fabulous teachers who had like a depth of theory and practice that they put into their work. But it didn't match what I was experiencing. Yeah. So, I would have things like, I'd be with a client and I would see their dead grandfather walk into the room and stand at the table,
Yep.
And then, from a therapist's point of view, you're not going to tell the client, you're not going to put something into the client that's they're not aware of, So I might ask, like, oh, I wonder what you're feeling in this part of your body at the moment. And they would be like, oh, I feel pressure, like hands on my leg. And it would be exactly where I was seeing the grandfather. Or they would get off the table and just say, oh, yeah, I was talking to my grandfather while, in that moment when you did this thing. And so I realized that, like, all of that. I mean, I'm not saying my teachers were wrong. They're not wrong.
No.
They're very wise, and very good at what they do. But it wasn't it. This is where the magic happens, right? In that moment where you're experiencing this connection with another soul, you're creating this field between the two of you, and that practice as well opens you up to the realization that, all of existence is a field, a connected field.
Mm.
And some of us are visible and some of us aren't. you know?
I mean, to be honest, you could say that about music theory, couldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Written by very clever people, but it doesn't explain the experience of playing music.
Yeah.
It's very similar, I think. Yeah. So when you started seeing this, what was your next step? Because I think there must be a step somewhere where you go, oh, I need to sort of speak to somebody about this.
Where I just jumped down the rabbit hole. Yeah, at the time I'm doing the healing work. It's a drunk story. Do you want a drunk story?
What was that for a drunk story?
Okay, so I have a very dear friend who is also a craniosacral therapist, and we trained together, and we were neighbors for many years. We lived very close together, and he was dating. He was not very nice. He was this performance artist, very ego-centered guy, and they invited me around one night for margaritas, and was sort of reading cards with margaritas. After toxic relationship over here, me, and they're like men drinking, me drinking. They could drink far more than me. So I I was pissed and trying out. So anyway, I ended up deconstructing their relationship with the cards, like completely, and they broke up the next day. Yeah. And it was a good thing for my friend. It was a good thing, But I think, that's another, like, as awful as that story is, it was another of those moments. It was like, okay, this is, you can do something with these things. This isn't just about introspection or inner alchemy or your inner journey. It's actually, you could use them to address issues with other people, And so then it was just, reading. There's the ayahuasca bit.
Well, that's always useful.
Yeah. So So then there was
more. This is more fun.
Yeah. So by this point, I'm well on the path of I'm interested in magic. I was doing like some mystery school work, reading the books and everything. I went to an ayahuasca ceremony in the UK. I've only ever done one, and
that's all you need.
It was awful. That's all it was awful. No, many people get a lot from it, and I did too, but not in the way I think that other people did, because what ayahuasca said to me was, this is not your tradition, meaning her and all of, it's a bunch of South American people that were there. I think this is not your tradition. And I was seeing all the things. I was seeing dragons, just like over and over, dragon faces. And she said, this is not your tradition. Your tradition is in this land, meaning the UK. So I took that, and that's when I started really like exploring. My ancestors are from Britain. I don't think I have, as far as I know, I don't have any genetic material in me that doesn't come from the British Isles. Like, according to, I haven't done the DNA test, but my mother and father have. So I started visiting all of the sacred sites of this country, whereas before, if I went on holiday, I would have gone abroad, and now, ever since then, really, I will get in the car and just drive and find a long barrow or find a stone circle and just be there and get to know the place. So I think that was it. Really, that brings us up to.
That's really good. So. I'm interested in your design work of tarot cards.
Yeah, another drunken story.
This is good. So you created your own pack.
Yeah, I have I've designed a tarot deck, and which all of the artwork is complete. I'm just slowly faffing about getting it actually turned into a deck that I'll put out.
Very interesting.
Called the Blood and Ink.
Right.
Yeah, have I shown you all the? I'll show you
I've
all the
seen
pictures
some
of
of
it.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures.
Yeah.
On the cards. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the? Okay.
Go. Yeah. Ask me a question.
What's the story?
Okay, so what's the story? So this is February of this year. I had done a road opener ritual with some friends. We have access to a little log cabin in an ancient woodland in London, that's just phenomenal to have access to something like that. And we performed a road opener. I had like very specific things which I won't reveal, which I was petitioning for in the road opener, and that would have been right before the 1st of February, right before Evil. And then following it up the next weekend, there was a fire walking ceremony, walking on hot coals, which is just absolutely beautiful. So what happens a week later? It was Camellia Elias inspired me, actually, because I saw she was on Facebook and she had sat down and did like a tarot deck in a day or something, which is like just phenomenal. And I thought, all right, I don't have to, I always thought I'll do a tarot deck, but it has to be planned out over years, and you've got to get the correspondences right, and everything has to be just so, and you have to write a book about it, and oh my God, it's just huge project. And so I just thought, fuck it. Fuck it. It's February the 14th, Valentine's Day. I'm at home alone. let's do this. And looked around. Okay, what do I had? Oh, I had some watercolors. I had red tube of watercolor. I had a black tube of watercolor. And I thought, okay, we'll put some brailles on this so that I don't, because I would have the tendency for each piece of art never to reach that stage where I thought it was good enough. So I thought, okay, like the practice here is going to be 3 minutes. It is what it is. Okay. And ended up using a plate of glass. So they're monoprint. So you paint on the glass and then print it onto the paper. And by the end of the night, I had 5 or 6 cards done of the major arcana. And I was also drinking heavily. I do so it was for some reason like the alcohol became part of the process. And the next day I sat down. I think I had I don't normally drink this wine. I don't endorse it,
No.
But I sat down. I had a beer for breakfast. Okay, 10 in the morning. Sat down and just started pouring these cards out one after another. And by the end of the weekend, I had the entire major arcana done completely. And even though, I'd given myself that, 3 minutes each, but what was happening was I'd do the main print for 3 minutes, and then I would just journey into the image. So each one was taking much longer than 3 minutes each, with a lot more thought. And it was evident to me that that it was coming from somewhere else, basically. Oh, someone's at my door.
You had the basic format that it was going to be only a few minutes to each card, but then you sort of
so it was clear to me that it was coming from somewhere else. And when I say somewhere else, I mean it's probably I believe it was fed to me from an entity. Okay. And I believe that we feed our ancestors, we feed our spirits, we give them offerings, but I believe that all of the alcohol that I was drinking through this process was what this entity needed to for this communication. It's the deck is channeled, that's for sure. And I have some vague understanding of what that entity is about, but not clear. All I know is the deck needed to be born, and it needs to be in people's hands. And that's where we're going with it.
Mm.
So I sent the pictures to a friend of mine, who is a fabulous medium and an artist and incredible creative person. And she's like, okay, you got to do the minor arcana now. And I'm like, holy shit, no, I can't. I was dead. But I thought, okay, we're here. We're here. Why not? So over the course of 2 more weeks, I plowed through the minor arcana and got them done as well. And it felt like it's definitely a cohesive package as a deck, but the minor arcana felt a much different process than the major one. There's like a lightness to it, which I guess is the same with most decks. There's a lightness to it that, I mean, and thank God there is. I don't think I would have survived if the whole deck was as heavy as the first one. But yeah, with the tarot, some tarot traditions, they talk about the fool's journey as you journey through the major arcana. And I feel like I did that over the course of a weekend, whereas maybe most people would take a lifetime to go on that sort of soul journey.
So there's a few things where you're saying about this process and everything about the road opener and stuff. And I've always been fascinated by a lot of the old blues players. And obviously, of course, they, we're talking about these guys from the deep south.
Yeah.
And a lot of their journeys are a bit sort of, there's a road opener somewhere, Robert Johnson is obviously the great story,
Yeah, and he made us deal with the devil, right?
Totally, yeah. Well, whether it's that or some other less prickly character, I don't know. But the point about it is that they're driven to do something.
Yeah.
And I think that from a musician's point of view is when going back to this sort of thing about how music's taught and all that sort of stuff is completely missed out of contemporary music. But of course, when you look at the sort of the British blues boom, those guys knew that stuff even though they were here because they picked up on it. Obviously Jimmy Page is a good example of that.
Yeah.
They knew what was, and Keith Richards was another good example. They knew what was going on, whether it was exact or whatever, but they knew there was something else going on. It wasn't about how many chords you can play or anything like that. It was something about what you were doing with that.
Yeah. You're a vessel for it, but I think that also it kind of lets you off the hook from owning the experience yourself. So you are a vessel, but you're not a mere vessel. It's not like you're egoless or you have nothing to do with the equation. Like you're a vessel that it hurts. It takes its toll. It moves through you're a vessel. Like it's not that just anyone could be the vessel. It's your own particular physical blood and bone and emotional makeup that and all of your experience that's before that allow you to be that vessel. So I'm very much not saying I'm not selfless in this experience. I did that. It came from somewhere else, but I did that. It's you could say I don't know, maybe emanation is a better word than co-creation.
That's interesting. And because I've messed around with a lot of these techniques in the work that I do, particularly when I've actually worked with other people, where I've got them to, they come up with an idea and then that puts you on the back foot as a musician to sort of, because, they might be a complete amateur. And you think, well, okay, what do I do with this? And you have to then go with what that presents itself. And then you get other people involved. So you're sort of there, sort of steering the boat, if you like, but, it's not your boat. if you see what I mean,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah.
And but the trouble is, the boat's under your command and your control.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
what plans have you got now, apart from getting this up and running? What other things have you got on the?
Um, yeah, so still working on the deck, looking for a graphic designer who could help me, a proper graphic designer, not me, who can help me with some bits and bobs on that. I continue, we continue the Coffee and Cards, which has a Facebook presence, which is our daily Zoom tarot practice. Continue that. Um, got an event coming up for Halloween, the
Cool.
Salon de la Fortune,
All right.
where we create a spooky mansion with different rooms
Oh, wow.
via the magical medium of Zoom. We open the doors to the mansion, and in each room you have a different fortune teller there to greet you,
Oh, wow.
and you can jump between the rooms. So it's really, it's kind of like half immersive. It's mad. It's half immersive theater, half
Wow.
psychic fair on Zoom.
Wow. And is this during the day, or is this
No, it's going to be October 24th, which is a Saturday, 8 o'clock UK time. So daytime for the Americans, but evening time
okay.
for us folk, with costumes required, obviously, for Halloween.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
coming up. Yeah, and also I haven't announced to anybody, but I want to do a talk maybe for uh astrological Samhain, which is that November 7th? November, yeah, I think it is, something like that. But I want to do a talk because you and I talked a bit about I've been journeying with Ellen Hayward, the wise woman of Cinderford, over a
Yes.
number of years, and I've kept all of that quite close to my chest. And yeah, I think it's time. It's
Yes.
time to give the
It
talk.
sounds like it is, because there are certain. I mean, a lot of these people were healers that were accused of stuff.
Yeah, and she was.
Yeah.
She would roll in her grave to be called a witch.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Of
yeah,
which a lot of the people that were accused of this stuff
yeah,
felt the same. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, there's the sort of cunning folk tradition, and a lot of that was against a form of witchcraft. Although you look at it and
yeah,
you'd look at it and go, well, it's a craft, but it's an
yeah,
interesting thing, and we've because everything's got a bit sort of muddled up and muddy and whatever.
yeah.
But that type of the sort of healer tradition,
Mm,
and I think we where we are with everything now, where it's almost like nobody actually wants to heal themselves. They want to go to somewhere else to
yeah,
type of attitude. It's a bit bonkers, really. I
yeah.
mean, there needs to be something where people are more engaged with their own health and their own body and their own, state of.
Yeah, and I find it interesting because like I say, her life is 1839 to 1912 when she died. So this isn't ancient history. This is relatively recent history. But as far as like advances in medical care, it's really a pivotal period because this is when you have it, especially during her adult life. Okay, looking at any of the newspaper archive, and you're going to find ads for herbalist and such doctor offering such and such pill for for portly women, for hair loss, and every quack, every small town had quacks offering their quackery, and some of those quacks actually grew up to have pharmaceutical companies, which are still
Exactly.
in existence today.
A lot of the gossip.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but also, also during this period, it is kind of, the industrialization of modern medicine is beginning to come up. And so in the small towns, you have people, that where are they going to go? How, where, what, they have to have this knowledge. They have to have someone that they can go to, because the medical care for them is just not, it's not there, or medical modern quotes modern medical care is just not available. And also, the medical associations are really challenged by herbalists. Herbalists are quite often abortionists as well. And and that raises a whole other challenge.
Mm.
And you wonder, like, why are the abortionists being persecuted because they're abortionists or because they're competing with the doctors?
There's a good friend of mine who's a very well-known herbalist, and he was saying that obviously when the medical the doctors sort of came into existence, instead they had to sell something that was more than what you could get from the local wise woman down the road. So lots of surgery came in.
Yeah.
Because they could do the surgery, so you ended up having surgery for all sorts of things, which somebody because if they just gave you a load of medicine and then charged you a lot of money for it, you could have got that down the road for next to nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, yeah.
Where you get things sort of develop in a particular way, and you see it now, don't you? With people ridiculing, which of course, I mean.
Yeah, what's interesting, like where Ellen Hayward lived in the Forest of Dean. So in this area, there's actually quite a lot of cunning people in this area, which are very well documented because Margaret Eyre, who's the editor of the folklore. What's the name of the journal? I always have one thing that pops out of my mind. The folklore journal. Anyway, she lives in the area, so she's traveling around. Collecting stories and meeting these people. And as it turns out, like in a lot of the other villages, the cunning folk were often butchers. So they were butchers and bone setters, as well as whatever other healing remedies, butchers and bone setters, because they understood anatomy and they could pop a joint back into its place, and they could splint a leg because they knew how bones fit together, basically. But in America, the father of osteopathy was a bone setter, and osteopathy developed, spun off into chiropractic. And in America, many medical doctors are actually osteopaths rather than GPs like they are here. So there's a weird shaky thread that connects healers with modern medicine, and back and forth. It's not as divided. The divisions are not as rigid as what we think.
No, that's right. I mean, it's just the way it's all sort of, it's just the way that education's worked and make people think in a particular way and all the rest of it. Interestingly enough, my claim to where I am, I'm only literally just down the road from where Culpeper grew up.
Oh, wow.
And there's a strange story that when he was due to marry somebody who lived in the village, and he was then, I think they were going to get married in Lewes or somewhere like that. And on the way, she was in a carriage going to her wedding, and he got struck by lightning.
Wow.
Apparently.
Wow.
So, I was going to read up on that before we spoke, because I thought it might be quite interesting, but as it turned out, I'm pretty sure that's correct. But anyway, he went sort of practiced in London.
Yeah, interesting.
It is fascinating. But when you read copy, it often says in Sussex this is called such and such.
That reminds me of so there's this one interesting little tidbit that I've discovered through my research in Ellen Hayward, and I don't know that if anyone else in the world knows this except for me. So if you'd like me to share it with you.
Yes.
Okay. So she came to infamy in two separate incidences, and the first one involved a family in a town, Mayhill, which I think maybe it's like 10 miles, which you lived in Cinderford in Gloucestershire. And the family one day woke up and they had £50 stolen from the house. Okay. And then over the course, this is all in the newspaper archives as well. It's amazing. You can follow this whole sensational story. Over the course of 3 days, the money goes missing. The mother disappears for several days. The son goes mad and stabs himself in the eye. And then the mother is found wandering in the woods carrying a hazel stick, which is meant to ward off witches. And at some point, it comes out that Ellen has been consulted on the situation. And then the whole thing, oh my God, a witch has been called in. The whole thing, it's discussed in Parliament. What are we going to do about the witchcraft in Gloucestershire? All of that. And there's some really beautiful, sensational things in the newspaper article. Okay, so they never really say what she did or that she was responsible for anything. It was just this image, of this old lady in her filthy house with chickens and herbs hanging from the rafters, and that she's bewitched someone. Okay, so the whole thing dies down. A few years later, what I've uncovered, what happens to this family after this, they are the father and the daughter are in a horse-drawn carriage going through the main street of the town where Ellen lives. A woman runs out from the side of the road, from the pavement, if it was paved. Her dress gets stuck in the wheel of the carriage. The entire thing tips over and kills the father and daughter.
Good God. That is weird.
Yeah.
That is weird. My goodness.
Yeah.
I think you'd think that was weird now, wouldn't you? If anything like that.
Yeah, you would. You accuse someone of witchcraft, of bewitching your family, falsely, I might add.
Yes.
And then you dare to go to her town.
Yeah. On that note, that's an amazing story.
Yeah. So now that's just you and me know that.
Well, until we post this up. Anyway, but it needed to be said. So if you can send us some details, and I'll pop them in the show notes and everything.
Yeah, thank you. I will.
Normally when people say, you can get me on, blah, 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 whenever I listen to a podcast, I have to always refer to the show notes. So.
Yeah, I do. And I do as well. I love kind of delving in and getting to know people in other ways as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
Anyway, thanks ever so much for your time, Elise. That was really...
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed chatting to you.
Yeah, well, some people do.
I heard a rumor.
Yeah. It's all right. It's all fabrication. But
there's no dad jokes either. I'm sorely disappointed.
There's plenty of them. Don't worry. So thanks very much, and all the best for what you're doing. And
yeah, thank you.
Because I think, as I say, from the creative point of view, when I like to sort of explore, how people do things from every perspective, because I think it all sort of points generally in the same direction. Weirdly,
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. In other words, it's not all about what you think, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
for sure. Certainly rationally. Anyway,
well, you for sure you've pulled a few threads out that I wasn't aware of tonight. So
that's what I do. Okay.
Well done.
Okay. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks, Vic. That was wonderful. Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'd like to say thanks to Elise for her time. That was a fabulously interesting podcast for me. And I like taking sort of a slightly lateral view of creativity. And I've got a couple of other interviews coming up soon that will pursue that even further. So if you want to connect with Elise, the details are on the show notes. And if you want to support me, you can visit my Patreon site, and that detail will be on there, and it goes into what I'm doing at the moment with the charity work. And so I'll see you next time. Until then.